In this session of the System 6 training videos, we'll be exploring the Sportloader program. Sportloader is the first application or program you see once your System 6 has completed the boot up process. Sportloader is the main menu for the System 6. It launches the individual sports, it provides system diagnostics information, facilitates software updates, gives users access to file management, and handles the proper shutdown of the timer. On the right hand side of your screen you'll find 6 boxes with various labels on them. To the right of each of these boxes you're going to see the unlabeled keys, which are referred to as the soft keys. If you're new to the System 6, you may want to back up and view the timer introduction video first in order to kind of familiarize yourself with the various parts of the System 6. The function of each of these keys is going to change depending on where you're at in the menus of the timer or within the various sports. Keep in mind, if you ever need to back out of a given menu or screen within Sportloader or any of the sports, you simply press the key label Quit to the right hand side of the soft keys. Your Sportloader screen may look a little different depending on which sports you have loaded. The 4 available sports for the System 6 are swimming, diving, water polo, and pace clock. Videos available that describe the use of each of those sports individually. Swimming and diving, just as a note, are standard on every System 6, and the other sports are available separately. By looking at the soft keys, you can see that this timer has swimming, diving, water polo, and pace clock, all 4 of them currently installed. Below the sports you can see that the soft keys are labeled, there's a soft key labeled Install. This function is used to update the various sports as well as the Sportloader program itself and the firmware of the timer. Since the install procedure has various methods, we're going to cover it in its own video. Also covered in the install video will be the printer configuration for those of you who have a newer System 6 that is USB enabled, or those of you who have had your System 6 upgraded to USB capability. Below the install button you can see the More key. If I press that, we're going to bring up a whole new set of options. Again, depending on what sports your timer has installed, your soft keys choices may be different. You can now see the Diagnostics key, which we'll cover shortly. The Network key will be covered as part of the install video because it's one of the methods for updating the timer. Followed by the next 2 keys down are the Disk and Background Image keys. Both of these we'll go over at the end of this video. The final key is that all-important Shutdown key. The shutdown key is it's there for a reason. Just like any PC, you don't want to just pull the power from it. It could be in the middle of writing a file or doing something of that nature, which would potentially corrupt files or cause some instability in the timer itself. So the shutdown procedure is very crucial. There's a label on the upper right hand side of your System 6 timer to denote how to do the proper shutdown, but in a sense what you do is you come back to Sportloader, you hit the shutdown key and you answer yes. You wait for the screen to go kind of a grayish white. In some of the older timers and some of the newer timers you'll actually see the Linux prompt come back up there, and it'll have a couple different wordings at the bottom, but just know that if it's been sitting on the Linux prompt for 30 seconds or more and it's not changed, that you're good to shut it down. So let's jump right in and start exploring the parts of the Sportloader program. Let's first take a look at the Diagnostics page. To get here I'm going to press the More key. Now I simply press the Diagnostics key to bring up the utility. Diagnostics utility can actually prove quite valuable in helping troubleshoot problems that may arise. You can now see that the Diagnostics screen is up and we have some new soft key menus to the right. You can also see that in the top Diagnostics screen it shows you the current firmware and Sportloader versions of it that are installed. Those of you astute enough to notice these are not updated, and we'll actually go through this on the install procedure on how to update all these to their latest versions. These are absolutely important because you want to make absolutely certain that your timer is up to date. You can check the download page of our website for current version numbers to verify that you're indeed running the latest and greatest software. Also listed on the next 2 lines are the serial number and the version of Linux that your timer is running. If your timer has not been updated in quite some time, you may not see the Linux version listed. Just another clue that you need to get your timer updated. Below those items we see the readouts for current and maximum temperatures. These are the temps inside the timer, and I should note that this is the maximum temperature that the maximum temperature is not the max allowable temperature, but rather the maximum temp the timer has seen since it was powered on. Think of it as the maximum session temperature. Below the temperature readouts, you'll see keyboard. If you suspected that one of the keyboard keys were not working, you can check them here. Note that when I press a key, it gives you the row and column numbers as well as changes the on-screen display so that you can verify the key's functionality. If I press the same key again, the on-screen display changes back to its original state. I'm going to skip over the pads and buttons section for just a minute and we'll look at the power source section. Notice the status is currently listed as plugged in. Reach around the back of my timer here real quick and I unplug the power connection. Notice the status changes to battery and the text System 6 is running on battery appears in the lower left of the screen. When you're in one of the sports, a string will appear somewhere on the screen to alert you that the power supply is either not functioning or has come unplugged. System 6 is absolutely not meant to run solely on battery. The battery is there simply as an emergency backup. While it might be possible to get an hour or more out of the battery, it'd be wise to assume that you only have, roughly half hour, 45 minutes until the battery is drained. Also keep in mind that the System 6 only charges the battery when the System 6 is not running, i.e. the power is plugged in and the switch in the back is turned off. At the very bottom of the diagnostic screen, you'll see the callouts for serial port test. This test is actually activated via the soft key. It's only valid if you have the appropriate cable that goes between COM1 and the diving I/O port on the back of the System 6. Technically speaking, you can run this test without the cables. Here, we'll go ahead and push it, and you'll notice that I get a failure in both directions of communications, COM1 to diving and diving to COM1. Technically speaking, testing without the appropriate cable at least tells you that there's nothing catastrophically wrong on the COM ports. Failure, I guess in this case, could be actually a good thing. So if without that cable, you absolutely should expect to see the words fail come up there. The configure network key is simply another point of access to the network setups that we'll go over during the install and update video. Enable scoreboard test key will send the signal up to your scoreboard for your numeric scoreboards and actually light up each line of the scoreboard with every other 8 turning on and off, bouncing back and forth. Okay, now let's get back over to the section for pads and buttons. As you can probably figure out, this area is going to show you what pad and or button is being pressed out on the deck. This does this for both the near and far end connections and for up to 12 lanes. So some of you might be realizing this would actually be a really good place to start off your testing before a swim meet. In the video for meet setup, we'll actually go over this, but it makes great sense to quickly look at this diagnostics page. You can look at it with or without any deck equipment. Without any deck equipment hooked up, it's going to tell you basically that the internals of the timer are okay. There's nothing shorting out without the equipment hooked up. As you hook up your equipment, you can also look at this to make sure that none of the push buttons or touch pads are registering when no one is out there touching them. I'm going to go ahead and hook up one of our training keypads on the near end connection on the back of the 6. Training keypads actually it helps me to simulate a race, pad and one button in this case, without having to actually drag out a cable harness or have someone running up and down the deck pushing buttons and hitting pads. It's going to tell me which pad or button is being pressed on the screen here. Notice in this case I pressed near end lane 1 pad. If I change the training keypad over to the far end connection, same thing applies. Notice it now says, in this case, far end lane 3 pad. So this is kind of it is a useful tool, the diagnostics page, and so now we're going to step over and we're going to actually start taking a look at the disk functions within SportLoader. Okay, so what we're going to do here, I'm going to hit the quit button, and we're going to go back down to more. And we're going to head over to the disk option right now. The first thing you see is there are three buttons that show up under here is data files, setup files, and sports programs. First one we're going to go into is data files. Data files handles all of your swim meets. It's the backup or the electronic copy of all your swim meet data. Dive meets, same thing. And pace clock and water polo logs as well. Currently right now I only have actually one meet stored on here. If there were multiples, I can use the up and down buttons to select between them, move up and down through the menus. I can use the select file button to actually put a, you notice it puts a check mark in here, selects it. Now I can do a couple things with it at this point. This is a USB System 6 timer, so the option in the menu is store the select files to USB. I can click there, dump it over to a USB drive. I can also delete the selected files. If I accidentally selected it, I can come back up here and unselect it. If I have a large number of files that I want to just dump onto a USB drive, in this case, I can use the select all function and click on that. There's not a whole lot here other than the things you want to keep in mind or be aware of is the disk space remaining. If you are doing an update and you have an older timer, one that has the floppy drive on it, and it shows up as no space available or 0 megabytes left, you want to make sure that you clear off your meets before you do your update. Otherwise, there have been some issues where they'll hang up on an update. So that's the real only key here to watch on this one. So if I hit quit and I get back out of this screen, I'm going to go now into the setup files. Setup files are basically the instructions for the timer each time it starts into the various sports, swimming, diving, so on and so forth, of what it needs to do when it brings up. So think of it as your configuration settings for those various sports. For swimming, what your pool looks like, that sort of thing. If you have an instance where you go to load swimming or diving or water polo and it tries to go into the sport but then comes right back out to the SportLoader screen, something has gone wrong. Someone has not shut down the timer correctly and has created a corrupt file, one of these setup files. You can actually go in and just select all of the files. If I select all of these right now, I can then come down here and I can delete them, and at that point all the potentially corrupted configurations are gone. Don't worry, those files get recreated every time we start up the sport. So that's just a little tip there. Hitting quit, I'm going to go back to the sports programs. Notice that it shows you what's installed and what's not installed over here. Also, each one of these screens still shows you the remaining disk space is available. In this case, it's got all the sports with the exception of Synchro are installed. I can delete those files. It doesn't matter because if I do an update, the software keys or the license keys are still on the System 6 timer. So if I did the update, it's going to bring them back onto the timer. So in the worst case scenario, someone's really shut this thing down wrong or badly, you could go in and delete the individual sports. If deleting the setup files didn't work to get you back into the sports, come in and actually delete the sport, shut the timer down, reboot it, come back in, go through the install procedure, reinstall the software, and you're back up and running. Alright, let's now step over and we're going to go through the last section of the introduction to SportLoader here. So I'm going to hit the quit button once and twice. Gets me back to the main set of soft keys. I'm going to hit the more button down here, and I'm going to go to background image. Background image, all this simply does is it allows you to change what the desktop image is on your System 6 timer. So if you've got a school logo or anything you want, vacation pictures, whatever you want, you can actually change this. The way you do this on the older System 6s, you would actually put it onto a floppy drive, bring it over, stick the floppy drive in, and choose the view files on floppy. Your menu choice would change. In this case, this is a USB timer, so if I hit view files on USB, it changes over to show you what I have on that USB. At that point, all I have to do is hit the set file as background, and you're done. At any given time, if you want to go back and view what files, once you've set a file from a floppy or a USB as the background, it automatically saves it onto the console. So once you're done, you can go back to this view files on console and it would show up. You can delete the files there as well. You have the option of selecting a particular file just by using the up and down button and deleting it. So this concludes the introduction to SportLoader. The next set of videos will actually go over doing the install or the update to the System 6 timer.